Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. I don't have any Creed lyrics for you. Too sad.
I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and I am not responsible for Arif's disappearance. I promise.
Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. I already need another vacation back to Mexico after last night's game.
Hey, Luke's back. Welcome back, Luke. It's the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party.
For the first time in 6 weeks, we do not have a Victory Monday episode for you. We will talk about Vikings Broncos today with this group. That's Luke Inman. That's Luke Braun. Arif Hassan, parentheses, illness, out of today's show. I'm Sam Ekstrom. We appreciate you watching on Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. Perhaps you're on the 24/7 live YouTube stream. We really appreciate that. Tell your friends about it. Watch your favorite shows about your favorite teams around the clock. We're also on the Locked On Vikings audio feed, wherever you get your podcasts. So many ways to consume Locked On Sports Minnesota. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, helping you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Plenty to get to on today's show. Vikings fall 21-20. Obviously, in a one-point game, a lot of plays swing it. And we'll talk about those plays that cost the Vikings last night in Denver. We're going to grade KOC. How'd the coach do? He's been under a little bit of scrutiny the last 12 hours or so. We'll talk about Josh Dobbs, who I think is maybe the fourth or fifth biggest culprit in this loss, but we'll discuss the quarterback's performance and, of course, nerdy stats of the day. I got a good one pertaining to the head coach. But Luke Inman, welcome back stateside. It's good to have you back on the show. I know you're drinking through a fire hose trying to catch up on the last 8 to 10 days of Vikings football, but here you are. You've got takes. Give us yours on Vikings Broncos.
Yeah, I had a chance to go back, rip through most of the game this morning. I did get to listen to a chunk of it on K-Fan last night with PA driving around trying to get back home. And I think, without a doubt, the number one takeaway or headline in this one was Vikings should have won that game, right? Instead, they handed it over on a silver platter. I mean, the headline is they lost this one more than the Broncos won. That's how it feels this morning anyways. And those are the ones that it feels like always hurt the most. I think when you outplay the other team and the stats too are so lopsided today when you look back through. I mean, possession, they dominated time of possession, first downs 19-13. The third down defense by the Vikings, they look like the 2017 Mike Zimmer defense on third down. Broncos didn't convert a third down until late in the third quarter. They end the game 2-12. And then how about this too? The running game, man. We've been banging the table all year. That finally shows up. They win that battle 175 yards to 46 for Denver, 36 carries to 15, absolute landslide. Those are some pretty telling stats, I feel like, of one team dominating for most of the night. And it says a lot, guys, that you didn't leave Denver with a win. So if I were to drop a pie chart of blame, 90% goes to the 3 turnovers, obviously. The other 10%, and I know we'll get into this a little bit, but I just thought, I would put that less 10% on KOC. Some questionable calls, maybe a little bit too conservative throughout that game. And I think ultimately in a 1-point game, that probably cost him.
Pie chart of blame, copyright Score North. Love it. Luke Braun, you always ask the question in the postcast. I'll ask you, what's your headline?
Same thing I said on the postcast, which you can find on the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel live after every game. And of course on the Locked On Vikings audio feed. It's turnovers. That's the Vikings choked. I think that's when I woke up this morning, I thought that felt like they had that one in their hands and they choked it. They failed on their last couple of drives. They failed on their last defensive possession. They had all kinds of opportunities. Stop them on this fourth down, you win the game. Convert this, get in field goal range, you win the game. They failed on all of it. They choked. Lights got too bright. That's where I'm at. But yeah, you can't turn it over 3 times. And I know one of them maybe should have been overturned, but if that were a legal hit, like if you change Kareem Jackson's hit to a legal one that's not to the helmet, it's on the ball. Like that's more fumbling. So yeah, get a stupid, cute third and 1 play call, Alexander Mattison peeing down his leg, bad interception from a bad pass protection from the running back from Ty Chandler, cost you the game, and then you had a chance to steal it anyways. Choked.
Yeah.
The only time you can get away with turning the ball over 3 times is if you create 3 turnovers. I just looked at that Ivan Pace. What, a minute 30 left in the game? They're marching that.
That he almost got.
Get that ball out. Props to Ivan Pace, by the way. Obviously, he's gotten a lot of love, a lot of spotlight for being a UDFA and just balling out. But just the wherewithal to even pull that ball out, and then he tried his best, but just squirted out of bounds. Man, you only needed 1. You didn't need 3 to match them. You only needed 1. Unfortunately, they couldn't get it. Yeah,
and you could argue that Russell Wilson threw him 2. He threw him 1 in the end zone. Metellus had it broken up by Judy. I need to watch that back. I thought Judy actually got a piece. I thought that was a good job by Judy. And then the touchdown to Sutton, where Metellus kind of froze. Blackman was too short to reach up and make that catch. And there's your ball game. I thought the Broncos were totally fraudulent. It's painful that they won that game. That offense is a complete joke. Their run defense is a complete joke. Now, they hit you hard, sometimes illegally. They rough you up. They're a pain to play against, and credit their turnaround defensively. But there are so many fraudulent elements of that team. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're going to turn back into a pumpkin. And you feel the same way about this game as you did the Tampa Bay Bucks loss in week 1. Another game where you were -3 in the take-give. Shocker. The Vikings are 0-3 in games this year when they're -3 in the take-give. Can't happen. On your Kareem Jackson point, Luke, sounds like it's a suspendable hit. They're talking about suspension again for Kareem Jackson, and it was not flagged.
That's
so there's
infuriating.
That's maybe a 6 points. Like maybe you drive for a field goal there. That's a 6-point swing. Obviously, the Mattison fumble. And I looked at this, the win probability before the fumble, 87.5, which is basically the high for the game. You were kind of at that point, too, when the Broncos had a 3rd and 10 on the final drive, and then they ran it and then converted to Sutton. But
I thought that was super savvy by Sean.
The run play on 3rd and 10.
The draw play, get 7, make it we can have 2 chances at a 4th and 10 or 1 chance at two chances at a 10-yard play or 1 chance at a 3-yard play. I love it.
I don't know. That's only savvy, though, if you get the 7 yards they did. It's kind of like KOC running it on 2nd and 10.
Look how soft they were playing. It was there.
The other play that bugs me is the KOC there's a few that do. KOC running it on 2nd and 10 from the 12 when you've got a chance to win the game with a touchdown.
To Ty Chandler, I believe, to the left side.
Ty Chandler got stuffed, then 3rd and 10 got sacked. That sequence, after you converted a fake punt, you converted a 4th and 1, to kind of go run, pass, and play for 3, didn't love it.
Yeah, 100%. And I was looking right before the half, right? I mean, KOC kind of gifted them 3 points there as well. 3rd and 1 from the Denver 48, 47, something like that. Calls that pass play out of shotgun. Dobbs swing pass to Mattison, I believe, goes incomplete. Always easy to say these things in hindsight because if it works, nobody really bats an eye. But, I mean, they were punishing Denver on the ground. Both Mattison and Ty Chandler averaging 5 yards per carry in the first half. Why not give it back to one of them? And then you're already inside Denver territory. Why not go for it? Instead, he punts it. I think it was Najee Thompson couldn't locate the ball, ends up being a touchback. Yeah. They end up marching down, just like Philly did in that Philly game right before the half, the Justin Jefferson turnover. Okay, it's like, okay, things couldn't be bad enough, and they march right down and get those 3 points. And again, in a 1-point game, I mean, it's plays like those and coaching calls like that, I mean, it's easy to pick on for sure.
Yeah, we're going to give KOC a grade in this game. This is a really relevant, nerdy stat to what Luke's talking about, so we're going to run this early, at least for me, because I've got mine all teased.
Analytics fans rejoice. It's time to get educated.
Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now.
With the nerdy stat of the day.
I just tweeted this out regarding the 4th and 1 from the Denver 48 on the punt. I think that's a fateful moment. And I thought it was weird at the time. I thought Collinsworth thought it was weird. The analytics said a 65% probability go rate. You should definitely go there. And I thought KOC usually gets this right, and this is so wrong. And I looked back at his 2 years as coach. It's his first time ever punting on a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 in opponent territory. Why? What made last night different? Was he that confident that a conservative game plan beats the Broncos? Was he that confident that his defense would get a stop? Because that's kind of how he handled the end game situation too, Luke Braun. He was very much playing for threes or playing for field position in this game, I felt like.
Happened against the Saints too, right? Like things turtled way up and got super conservative. That's why you need to hire offensive-minded head coaches, Defensive-minded head coach is always going to have this kind of oh, wait, sorry. That's what everybody said about Mike Zimmer for 2 years and thought that by hiring somebody on offense, we just wouldn't have this anymore. It's what teams do. People got really mad too during the like 6 years where Mike Zimmer was like 34-1 with a halftime lead. I had somebody saying like, how does this has been happening to the Vikings for a decade? Like, no,
but he lost that one game though. Don't you remember?
With Zimmer, it fell apart in the last 2 years because the defense just got like bad all the time, whether they had a lead or not. O'Connell has not protected leads at all. So I don't know, change in philosophy. Maybe he's trying something new, but I mean, this team has blown immense leads constantly, whether they're aggressive or not. Maybe going into turtle mode and, not going for this 4th down or whatever isn't the answer either, but shoot, you got to try something. They can't put a team away to save their lives. They were driving to finally get up, and like, it was 17-9 when Mattison fumbled, right?
That's the killer.
Punch it in there. It's 24-9, and that starts to feel, detrimental to the Broncos, right? But no, you choked it away. I don't know. Learn to put a team away. Play with a lead.
Do you think any of it has to do with just how well this defense is playing under Brian Flores right now? Like there's maybe somebody in the back of his mind going, yeah, well, you know what though? Our defense is playing just lights out though. I mean, maybe we, let them do their magic and do what they do best. And maybe they can come up with a stop. Because you're right, Sam, like that just doesn't seem like KOC, the KOC that we've known anyways over the last year and a half. It's just very uncharacteristic for sure. And did you say 4th and 1 or 4th and 2? He's never inside the opponent territory, never not gone for it, no matter where they're at.
For it.
Wow.
Never. I mean, well, great. Like he's kicked some field goals.
Oh, okay.
But he's never punted. He's never punted in that situation. Which, I thought it was weird in the moment. You've got, and again, the Broncos get the ball out of the halftime. So, they can double dip now. You're giving them a chance with, I think, multiple timeouts and over a minute. That's an easy, and at altitude, they only need 40 yards. Maybe a little too much faith in Ryan Wright for getting the touchback there. I think Wright actually wasn't calibrating the altitude maybe because he was a little bit deep on a couple of those punts where he needed to kind of bounce it at the 10 so Thompson could down it.
Yeah, I wanted to. Is that the deal? Is it supposed to land on the 10? Because those landed on like the 5. If you get a good bounce, those are phenomenal.
Right.
I guess I got to be in the earpiece to know what the call is. Is it like, a pitching wedge where he's trying to spin it back, or is he trying to bump and run it down to the 1? I don't know what type of punt or style it was. The way that Wright dropped the ball on the punt, it looked like he was trying to spin it back to me.
So let me shout out Kevin Fielder, who writes special teams articles on a Substack called Special Teams Matter, and also writes for Vikings Wire. I'm going to ask him right now.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know. I saw some people on the timeline who, had a few things to say about, Wright's game yesterday, and just would have been nice, obviously, to get even just one of those downed inside the 20. Instead, they both go for touchback. So, yeah, that was a little disappointing as well. A lot of different factors last night. And again, when you lose by 1 point, boy, easy to cherry pick all these things for sure.
It is. Everything is so magnified. Yeah. We'll give KOC a grade. We'll give Dobbs a grade in this game. I think we got to talk about the quarterback too. He's not the focal point, but he is a big part of the story from this 21-20 Vikings loss. But first, a word from LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps bring you today's show. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates. That's why you check out LinkedIn Jobs. They help find the right people for your team faster and, most importantly, for free. So you add your job to LinkedIn, put the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile, spread the word that you're hiring to your network. Simple tools like screening questions with I think this is so smart. Make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience to help you filter through the morass that can be a pile of resumes. It's very hard to get to the bottom of it and find the person you need. Small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we got grades to give KOC, grades to give Dobbs, but first, Luke Braun is going to knock your socks off. Let's even run the intro again. That's how big this nerdy stat is going to be.
Analytics fans rejoice. It's time to get educated
Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now.
with the nerdy stat of the day.
And let's give it one of these.
So I don't know about you guys, but it has felt to me for my entire Vikings watching life that the Vikings do one thing consistently, and that is outgain their opponent in losses, which they did on Sunday.
This
night.
is going to be a historic
boy.
nerdy stat. Oh, boy.
No, not historic, but this year they've lost 5 games. In those losses, they have gained a total of 1,936 yards. Their opponents have gained 1,771 yards.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe their opponent played a lot more plays. Maybe it's a time of possession thing, right? So I did it from a yards per play perspective. The Vikings, in games they have lost, have outgained their opponents 5.9 yards per play to 5.4 yards per play. They, on average, outgain their opponent in losses. The kicker in those losses, the turnover ratio, 13 giveaways to just 2 takeaways. I'm ready to storm the castle here. It's so infuriating. So infuriating. If they could just get their crap together on turnovers, they could be like 11-1.
It's so hard to solve for turnovers. It's so hard to look back because it's so spread out. It's a Hawkinson drop here,
right. It's a different thing every time.
Yeah,
it'd be one thing. It's like, the quarterback's throwing a ton of interceptions, and you go, okay, well, that's the deal. But it's like like down to down, play to play, they're doing so many things right. So you talk about like, should Mattison is a problem, and this is up in the O line, and what about the defense and Dean Lowry? All these guys down to down doing fine, but everybody has made one mistake, or maybe 2.
That's brutal.
Yeah, it'd be so much easier to just say, okay, here's pinpoint the issue, the 1, maybe 2 guys even at this point, because there's been so many, but that's just not the case. You're right. It's just so spread out so evenly, and that's why it's frustrating for sure.
So in light of sort of the conservative game plan conversation we came off of, Inman, what are you grading KOC for this one? Keeping in mind too, fake punt, worked out pretty nicely. Yeah, like some good stuff. But what would you grade him?
I don't know. Maybe the bar has been raised a little bit higher. Maybe I'm going off the curve. Just how well I've been grading him throughout at least this last 5-6 weeks, this winning streak. But I'd probably say C-. Again, easier to say when you lose a game like this. And you can sit here and cherry pick all these things. It's a little bit easier, but I know the crux of this game too came down to 3 turnovers, which again, that's on the player. That's not on KOC. That's not on a coach, but I still think there's plenty to criticize. I think when it comes to some of his decisions, we already touched on a few of them. He gift wrapped that 3 points before the half when he called again, a pass play on 3rd and 1, then punted, which, your nerdy stat pointed out he's never done, very uncharacteristic. And when you lose by 1, it's hard not to point the finger at him. Love the fake punt. I mean, you called it out. Love that. But then you follow that up with going super conservative down in the red zone. And you think about it, you get a touchdown down there instead of a field goal. Maybe the game's over. Maybe that's enough. So, yeah, I mean, it's only been, 12 hours or so since the game ended. So it's all it's kind of raw and fresh still,
Mhm.
but I'm going slightly below average for KOC. I'm going to go with the C- for last night.
Yeah. Ron?
I'm going to be a little nicer. I think it's like we can talk about a couple of decisions, right? We can say, that 4th down, that 2nd and 10 play call. Those are singular plays in a game where there's 100 plays. And I think the game plan on the whole, like I want to look at big picture, right? The game plan offensively was to come in and run the rock. And I think that's the right move against the Broncos. I think you want to come in and gash them on the ground, which they did. They put up 170, 140 from scrimmage. You killed them on the ground. I think you came in wanting to run and you ran. That's a success to me. What amount of the turnovers do you put on the head coach? I think is sort of a nebulous question, right? Because ultimately you can't carry it for them. And they've been drilling turnover stuff. They've been doing all the things you do when you have a turnover problem with that big, funny black poker thing. And yet it still happens. That's on the dudes to me. Blowing a block. Hey, that was schemed up right on the whiteboard. You just lost, Ty Chandler. Like those major moments to me are execution more than they are a schematic issue or a coaching issue. But yeah, man, they totally melted down in the 3rd quarter. Penalties and, discipline and stuff like that. So you still have to give him some portion of that. I'm gonna go with a flat B. I don't think it was a below average coaching performance. In fact, I think the Vikings got more positive stuff out of O'Connell than the Broncos did out of Peyton. I think O'Connell was the better coach in this one. But I don't think that they were the more consistently executing team, and that's on players to me.
And the Broncos had to give up draft picks for Sean Payton. Let's not forget that too.
Yeah, just give up draft picks for a dude that couldn't figure out how to deal with a team that drops 8 a lot. I mean, they were befuddled by Russell Wilson was totally befuddled by that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Russ is washed, man.
That's a Brian Flores thing. But I mean, hey, if the head coach has to eat the turnovers, he also can take his part of the credit for a good defensive game plan, even though the defensive coordinator came up with it.
Yeah. Can I just take the average and go C+? I think that you both raised great points. I was pretty sour on some of those singular plays we talked about with KOC, but in general, the situational mastery that he preaches and was known for last year, I thought was absent in this game.
That's been an issue all year, and lo and behold, they win fewer close games.
Correct. Bad going into the half, bad ending the game, bad in the opening script where they didn't have a lot of time to execute it, but you had 2 fumbles in the first 3 plays? 2 fumbles? So I'm a little down on KOC right now, and I feel like that maybe combined with the second half against the Saints, maybe that had a carryover effect for me. But let's talk about his quarterback.
Just real quick, 11-0 in
ahead.
1-score games last year, 5-4 heading in last night, 5-5 now in 1-score games.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right? 5-5.
That is regression to the mean. Yep.
Regression to the mean. Can't wait to get to our bye week episode and go over all our preseason predictions because I know that was one of them. Sam, you do a great job of coming out with the list of questions. But
if I recall, I predicted that on the season they would be 5-5 in 1-score games.
I think you're right.
I think there before Thanksgiving.
I think a couple of us said there was going to be at least 7 or 8 1-score games, and Arif's head almost popped.
Yeah,
off his
Arif was
body.
like, "Come on, it's like full normal."
No way. I'm like, have you watched this team? Come on.
And we still underestimated it.
Yeah, there's going to be like 13 for the year, maybe 14, maybe 15. The quarterback Dobbs fumbles an issue through his first Vikings interception. Not great. Still had 2 plays that were absolutely magnificent in this game. And this is the high variance Dobbs that I think we know we have. He's going to give you some plays with his legs that change the fabric of the football game. And he's going to give it away sometimes. He's not going to be able to work his way out of every pickle when the pocket collapses. So how are you viewing Dobbs, Luke Braun? What do you think today?
I mean, that's always been the deal, right? Like you said, this is why when the Saints game happened and everybody was like, "Oh my God, this guy's real. He should be the guy." Let's talk. People were saying the words contract extension, or at least talk about it. And it's like, okay, chill out, right? Like, let's see him do it for many weeks in a row. It's a week-to-week proposition with Dobbs. Kirk was a week-to-week proposition too, in a different way. And if he had a meltdown, it would come, I think, a lot rarer than Dobbs's have come in his, like a lot rarer in his career. But, you know, you look at what Dobbs did in Arizona and to a lesser extent what he did in Tennessee and in Pittsburgh earlier in his career. And this is always who he is. He threw some unbelievably dangerous throws. He always will. It's just who his personality is as a quarterback. And you just have to say, all right, I'm going to put up with some picks sometimes. I don't necessarily think that the pick was his fault this time. The fumble was, as much as, again, like I wish it was called. You got the ball knocked out. That's on you. But he like deserved more turnovers anyways. So like, I don't know, that balances out. To the question, the like actual major question, and we talked about this last night on the postcast too, is his leash any shorter? I think it's about the same. Because I was thinking about it coming into this game. If Dobbs had a total 5 turnover disaster, we probably don't go with him on Monday night. And I think that that's just like the same still. Like if he has a 5 turnover disaster, we don't go with him. Otherwise, he's probably still, if he has another game like this one against Chicago, you probably still stick with him. I mean, Mullins was ready to go.
Right? Like,
Well,
do you
that's the
have
question.
even a clear option? Because Hall is ostensibly still dealing with concussion symptoms and potentially had a setback, because didn't he go from either full to DNP or full to limit? Like he had a regression this week. Did he
I
not?
don't think he did. I don't think he
I didn't
or I think
see
he was
that.
limited. Hold
Okay.
up. Let me double check on that, because especially
that'd be
with
interesting.
concussions, misreporting, it can be like, I really don't want to.
Let's check on that. Luke Inman, what are you thinking about Dobbs?
Yeah, I mean, a C, I guess, you know, if we're going back to the grade. I'll just say this. I know he looked like, you know, the backup quarterback we all thought we were getting when we traded for him during the second half last night and the second half last week versus the Saints. Certainly concerning for sure. It feels like you get to certain points in these games that the offense hits a big lull, and it's like, all right, have these teams figured out Josh Dobbs, how the whole thing works? But I have to give a lot of credit to the Broncos defense, man. I mean, that defense has been absolutely lights out the past month. And I think they really deserve a lot of credit as well, because they've shut down Mahomes and some other big names lately. And, you know, I don't think you're going to face a defense like that every week. So, you know, you can pinpoint and kind of cherry pick like the Dobbs running magic. That wasn't there. But you look at the last 2 games, the Broncos defense held Mahomes and Josh Allen. Mahomes and Josh Allen, to a combined 33 yards rushing the 2 weeks prior. So, yeah, I mean, it's only week 3 for Dobbs here in Minnesota. He's still learning on the fly a little bit, but now you got to go on the road, on prime time, face arguably the hottest defense in the league. And I guess I just didn't expect a game from Dobbs that was going to, you know, wake up the next morning and have Pro Bowl stats in the box score. I just hoped he would make enough plays to come away with the win, like we've seen the last few weeks, even if it did look messy and kind of wild and coloring outside the line, so to speak. But yeah, I would go with the C. I mean, certainly not what you wanted for sure. But again, that Broncos defense, man, has just been absolutely on fire.
Yeah, they rough you up. And I did confirm, I think Braun did too, that
Yeah. He
was
went
a DNP on Friday.
Limited and then full and then back down to DNP. I don't know what the deal is with that. Or maybe they just realized you're not playing. Let's just not even bother with you. We'll have to see. I don't know. The concussion protocol is one of those things that there's so many variables to it that predicting it feels like a fool's errand. With Dobbs, it is interesting though. If Jaren Hall is healthy, I mean, Nick Mullins was above him in the depth chart before he went out, but lots changed since then.
Sorry, go ahead.
But with Dobbs, I think that's a good way to put it, Luke. Like, he didn't quite make enough plays. He made some. I mean, that touchdown to Josh Oliver was sick. Mm-hmm. He hit Josh Oliver up the seam in the first half in an absolutely awesome pass that I don't think is actually usually part of the progression. I think he just picked that out. Could be wrong on that. But, like, there were a lot of really sick, scrambly plays. In the second half, that dried up as the Broncos played contain better. Now the book is out, right? And with 1:18 and 3 timeouts, I'm telling you, if Kirk's there, I'm thinking that's got about a 90% to get the field goal we want. Like Kirk always hit that last year.
Yeah.
2021 Kirk, it was always a disaster. But the quieted mind, Kevin O'Connell, Kirk, even this year, like, 118 and 3 timeouts. I feel great about that. Dobbs, now next time we're in that situation with Dobbs under center, I'm going to go, oh man, is he just going to kind of like scramble backwards, run back and take a 15-yard sack and we lose? That's what happened, right? Yeah, there was pressure that 3rd and 10. Horrible play for Garrett Bradbury, ended up on his butt. But you turned something bad into something worse, right? You couldn't get the ball away. You ran backwards 15 yards and took an intentional grounding. That's not making enough plays, right? There's you got to create something, and he didn't. That's not enough. And so when we want to talk about what do we do next year, right? Are we bringing him back into camp? To me, that's an L in that question. That's a reason to not is, well, if I can't trust you with a minute and 3 timeouts to get a field goal, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I need to see a bigger sample size. Again, Broncos defense has just been lights out, but I absolutely hear the argument 100%. Yeah. You're not going to win in the NFL more games than not if you can't trust your quarterback to move down the field in those pressure situations, when the game's on the line, buck 30, minute left, whatever it may be, for sure. I get that.
And go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to bring up, and Luke actually touched on it too right before I was going to mention it, but just Josh Oliver. Anybody pleased about Josh Oliver's usage last night? Something we all thought. I think we were going to get this all season long when we paid him all that money. Caught 4 targets, all 4 balls thrown his way. Huge touchdown in the red zone on that improv Dobbs play. I mean, you get that kind of production every game from him. That's going to help you. I think that's going to help you out a lot in those 2 tight end packages, those heavy sets, when you're running the ball like they did last night, and be able to mix in that play action to a second weapon like Josh Oliver. That was fun to see. That was nice.
Did they get 100 yards out of tight ends?
Yes,
they did.
They did, and I think gave Hawkinson a maintenance day. Have you seen the snap counts? I'm fairly certain that Oliver got a much bigger chunk than usual.
Oh, was he not in? Hawkinson still led the team in targets and receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Oliver 34, Hawkinson 52. So that's probably about a 15 snap reduction for Hawkinson.
A couple drives off, kind of like the last game. So they're still kind of putting him on us. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's on a pitch count slightly, maybe not all the way. 52 snaps is still quite a bit.
Leading the team in receiving by a lot, but he's not worth the money.
No.
Very willing to believe that the fumble issues with Dobbs may not be a perpetual problem. I think the snap stuff is just more reps with Bradbury, better technique under center. When you run the ball like Dobbs does, you're susceptible to that. You're susceptible to guys targeting you and having the ball pop out. So I think it's more so for me, the throws, the risky throws. And I actually see the wheels turning with Dobbs a little bit that, okay, now that I know the offense, I actually need to try to get through my progressions.
I can see it.
He's really hanging in the pocket a long time on some of these plays, maybe almost to a fault, where against Atlanta, there was no expectation. He could just go on his instincts, his athletic instincts, and make stuff happen. No one's going to be upset. There's no expectation for him. And now that there's an expectation, I actually think he might be overthinking sometimes in the pocket and saying, okay, well, I got to get it to Addison here because I got through my progressions and I don't want to run here. I don't want to over rely on that. And it might be costing him on a couple of these risky throws that were nearly picked. So
I will say last night, too, against that Denver defense, and I'll have to watch the all-22 and watch it back. But, again, just knowing that they held Mahomes and Allen to 33 combined rushing yards, clearly they go into those games against mobile quarterbacks with at least, a spy on every play or whatnot, and really probably put a heavy emphasis on making sure Dobbs was forced to do that this week. But I hear what you're saying with that argument, Sam, for sure. You could see it.
Yeah.
It's slow. That's part of it, too, is he had some fantastic pockets, and I've been hard on the line because they kind of fell apart at the end. But it's not easy when your quarterback holds the ball that long. Like we talked about this with Cousins when he would hold the ball on. This is way longer. that is just going to make everything a lot harder in the trenches, which is another thing that's like, okay, yeah, this dude is a backup. But like if Cousins had the game that Dobbs had in Atlanta, we probably would be complaining about it because of all the turnovers and stuff. But like that would be an insane thing to compare apples to apples because the contexts are so different. The contexts are less different now. I know Chris Collinsworth went on a whole thing in the broadcast about how Kevin O'Connell, would like explain the play calls in the huddle. They aren't doing that anymore. O'Connell said that they aren't doing that anymore. That now he knows the plays. He's still got the wristband. A lot of Cousins did too. But it's way less, on the fly install stuff. Like they have full complements of game plans. And so I think the excuses run dry a little bit. Dobbs has to get through this faster. He has to get through his progressions more quickly, and things need to be more on time and in rhythm. That will make the offense do better in the future, but we kind of have to see if he can do that. And I think he has a lot of time to make that happen and to kind of earn a little bit more leeway when it comes to making offseason decisions.
How many snaps did he bobble last night?
Two. Yeah.
I believe.
Neither of them
fell on
both.
Sticks out because
been.
one was the first play of the game, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yes. You're right. And then I think
there was another one he just had
Mattison. And Mattison bobbled the direct snap, which was another people.
Yeah, which that was just Mattison. That was a fine snap to me.
Speaking of which, let's debate the running back situation. We've still got some time left on today's Minnesota football party. Stick with us. First, a word from DoorDash. DoorDash is one of our great partners here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? Order on DoorDash and save on football watch party favorites. Just had a good watch party opportunity with a Sunday night game. Now a Monday night game coming up. Have your friends order, get some groceries, get some apps, get your favorite restaurant food via DoorDash. Pizza, wings, soda, burgers, or you can just get the hot dog buns from the store with DoorDash, and you won't miss a second of the game. Quick to order. Just hop on the DoorDash app, get what you need, bing, bang, boom, and it's coming your way to make sure that you don't miss a second of the game. Get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. Subject to change, terms apply. Again, 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Enter code LOCK23. Subject to change, terms apply. LOCK23, DoorDash app, and fuel your football watch party. We began this debate on the postcast last night with Ron Johnson, Luke Braun, and myself. We'll further it today with Luke Inman's input. We'll call you Luke Input whenever you have something like really big to say, Luke.
Copyright. Yep.
Yeah. That'll be trademarked. Where do you stand on the running back debate? Because Ty Chandler, yeah, he looks explosive. He's looked good. And last night, including the fake punt, vastly outgained Alexander Mattison. But the pass blocking, that's the kicker here. Where do you stand on this running back debate?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Maybe you guys touched on it last night. I think at this point, that's the only thing holding him back from giving Ty Chandler the full-time job at this point. And they just don't feel clearly. And this goes back to training camp too, and we're trying to figure out Kenne's situation and Ty and just how this whole running back rotation was going to work. They don't feel totally confident in his pass blocking and protecting the quarterback. You saw it again last night. I think it was the interception to Josie Jewell, linebacker from Iowa. He got blown up. Dobbs' arm was hit, and it turns into an interception. So especially with Dobbs right now, a guy who's still learning on the fly, I think they want to give him all the help they can. But as far as just a pure runner goes, I think Ty's proven, but at this point, he adds a little bit more juice, some more explosiveness to the run game that, this run game as a whole. And Mattison, I mean, he looked great last night, but where's it been all year? Basically, it just hasn't been consistent. So I think if it weren't for the pass blocking, he'd be the guy hands down, in my opinion. And I think Mattison, on the other hand, he's a guy who, what you got by now, right? Like if he can get north and south and get some steam moving downhill, he still gives you a great compliment, something he always gave Dalvin Cook a nice little 1-2 punch with. But, the fumbles are a huge issue with him. And I think until I see something different, I think Chandler should be getting at least, what was the snap count last night? Like Mattison 3 to 2, kind of
2 to 1 Mattison.
2 to 1. Okay.
48, Chandler 23.
Okay. I mean, until I see something different, I think it should be at least a 50-50 split. And maybe it's a Ty Chandler situation, which sounds odd because Madison's running style, being that in between the tackle north-south guy, feels like more of a first and down guy. But if the only reason you're limiting Ty Chandler is because of the passing situations, maybe Ty Chandler should be getting the bulk of carries on first and second down, maybe at minimum, right? And then on passing downs, you find a way to put him in the best position to succeed until he can. And who knows? I mean, some running backs just never figure it out. Look at Adrian Peterson, as good and as talented as a physical specimen as he was. The whole passing situation, whether it was pass blocking or even just catching out of the backfield, after 10 years, he just never figured it out. But maybe it's just a situation where he just needs more reps. He needs more practice at it. Maybe he can hone that craft eventually. And I presume, again, that's really the only bugaboo right now, holding Ty Chandler back, because when he's just got the ball in his hands, man, you can see it. He's provided a huge spark to this running game.
Yeah, Braun, you've kind of been, I don't want to say a Madison apologist, but you've wanted to give him opportunities here. Is that kind of still how you feel?
I just want people to relax a little bit. People are just going too hard at it. I think criticizing Mattison is fine. There's a lot of things that he has done incorrectly. He's fumbled. He has been credited with not 1, but 2 fumbles on the year. I think the fumble thing, I feel like I'm being gaslit a little bit. He's got 2. There are a couple of times from, I think it was the Eagles game, where he fumbled, but he was called down. And while those are annoying, and I was annoyed by them that day as well, you can't count those, because then you have to count that for everybody. And what counts as a fumble, but you were down, but it was just barely. What counts as just barely? How do you change the stat for that? How do you change the you can't really compare him to other guys that way. So it feels really difficult to add those to the stat unless you just are trying to push a narrative, which it feels like a lot of people are just doing. Vision wise, I think if you say that Ty Chandler has better vision than Alexander Mattison, I want to challenge people to show me what they mean by that, because I don't think that that's true remotely at all. I know there is the meme about Mattison and his vision, which I think is just people getting really mad over a play from 3 years ago.
The Seattle game?
The Seattle game play.
Also involving Russ with the last minute drive.
Yeah, which they are wrong about. That play was CJ Ham's fault. But people, now it's just what's in people's heads, and everything you see is just going to conform to what's in your head, because that's how our brains are wired. But I want to challenge people to say, okay, what was the read on this play? I think about, there was a play from last week that Matt Freeze at it's Fries, like French fries football, who posted a play of Ty Chandler and said, this is a misread. It was a clear as day misread. He bounced a play. He should not have bounced it, and had a much better hole if he takes what was beautifully blocked for him. And people went crazy on it. People said that, well, you don't know what you're looking at. That's Madison wouldn't have done that, and blah, blah, blah. People need to look at it. I don't know. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. Madison has better vision than Ty Chandler. You fight me. That said, Ty Chandler has burst, right? And that's what Mattison doesn't have. He doesn't explode through the hole, and so those gains will be limited. And with Mattison being better at pass protection, I've kind of come to the conclusion, I think 50-50 is appropriate. Which, look, man, that's the second time guy that I've said this about with Mattison. Mattison started this season as the bona fide starter, and he has now fallen to a guy that should probably be in a carry split with somebody else, which, hey, we all thought that's what would happen in the offseason. But that's bad. That's a bad season. You've lost your claim to snaps. So please do not mistake me for secretly saying Mattison is good. I am not saying that. I think a running back is a glaring need in this offseason. Neither of these dudes are good. I think these two dudes are on about equal footing, and an even split is appropriate. We were told we were going to get an even split by Tom Pelissero that morning. I guess we got more of a 2-to-1 split. So I think an even split is appropriate. but I want to temper takes down to that instead of like leave him on the tarmac in Denver. I don't think that that's appropriate at all.
I know the fumble and the turnover is going to put kind of an asterisk or a black eye on his game last night, but was last night his best game of the season, just as far as a pure runner goes?
Yeah. If you take the fumble out, which you probably shouldn't, because that fumble was horrible. I mean, he just dropped it like Jesus. But
I'm looking
yeah,
at PFF, his elusive grade, 126.9 elusive grade.
Yeah, he was
unbelievable.
Duking and jiving, man. It was great. And I think if he hadn't fumbled, yeah, we'd be talking about like, wow, Mattison had a good game. Kind of reminds me of like coming off of the Eagles game earlier in the season, and then the Vikings ran it down the Chargers' throats, and we go, oh, there we go. Okay, Mattison kind of earned a little bit more leash with us, but you fumble, you ruin your day. I'm sympathetic to that.
There's a lot of layers to this, but like let's just keep in mind all of the running backs that have come around here the past few years that look more explosive and faster than Alexander Mattison, who can't surpass him on the depth chart. Mike Boone, Cam Akers, Kene Nwangwu, Ty Chandler.
AJ
all
Rose.
bad vision guys.
They're all
could
better.
Not see the field.
They're all, you might say, better athletes, but don't fulfill the intangibles that you need. I haven't seen sort of routinely bad pass blocking from Chandler to think that's a gigantic problem, but it killed you last night. It only takes one or two times in a game to flip the game on its head. You got to be 100% on that kind of thing. Mattison is better there. That being said, I'm with Braun. Like, I still think that the gains you get in the screen game, the high ceiling you get in the run game with Chandler, I think it offers you a lot more potential offensively, because again, you're not getting anything explosive with Mattison. I mean, he's having a career low yards per carry year. So I'm all about elevating Chandler in the snap count, but just like Braun said, understand why they've stuck with Mattison as long as they have.
Mm-hmm. So where are we leaving? 50-50 split?
That's where I think it should go. Yes. 50-50 split and throw the whole room away in the offseason.
I would bring Chandler back.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
that's Miles
bring the
Gaskin
guys back under contract and see who makes the team, right? But I mean, I want to bring in a free agent and draft a guy. I think that room needs a serious infusion of talent.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Hey, I got to get to my nerdy stat real quick. I know we're about to wrap up. Russell Wilson. Guy's 8-1 versus the Vikings now. Pretty nerdy, I know.
God.
I mean, that's about as nerdy as you can get. But it just needs to be said. The guy is 8-1. The Vikes cannot beat this man, no matter
Probably
what
last time
jersey he's in or how average he plays. I mean, his QBR was a 32 last night. They didn't convert a third down until end of the third quarter. And he does it again. Mr. Unlimited, he does it again. He just finds a way to break our hearts. 8-1.
They beat him in 2021 for their first win of the year in come from behind fashion. Their only win against Russell. But in how many of those games did you feel like the Vikings kind of had his number? Like the playoff game, obviously, the Blair Walsh miss.
Oh, yeah.
The game in Seattle that we've talked about with the late drive, DK Metcalf, Cam Dantzler.
Yep. Cam Dantzler losing it in the lights.
A handful of others as well. Yeah. It's been rough. I don't like the Broncos at all. I'm going to bet against them in our parlays going forward.
I have a sense of bitterness.
We'll make those bets on Thursday. Ron Johnson will join. Arif Hassan, perhaps. We'll see if he's back from the IR. But thank you for watching Minnesota Football Party, for listening to the Minnesota Football Party and all of our programming here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. To our everydayers, we love you, and we will talk to you in a few days. And a happy Thanksgiving as well from all of us here at Locked On Sports Minnesota.